Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes before we get started. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We'll just give it about 1 more minute to allow others to join. Please feel free to say hello by typing into the chat. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Carolyn Cralot, and I'm the Director of Dual Language Learner Programs for Early Edge California. We appreciate all of you joining us to learn about effective classroom practices for equitably serving preschool-age dual language learners. I'm very pleased to introduce our speakers for today, Dr. Carola Oliva Olsen, Executive Director of Professional Development and Multilingual Education at the Institute for Racial Equity and Excellence, and Ana Arambula Gonzalez, Coach for Fresno Unified School District's Language Learning Project and Adjunct Professor at California State University, Fresno and Fresno City College. Some quick housekeeping before we dive in. We'll be recording this webinar and sharing it on our website. And there's also a Q&A box located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So please feel free to add questions there throughout the program that you would like us to answer during our Q&A session. And in the chat box, you'll see that there's an option to message either panelists or panelists and all attendees. Please feel free to use it to say hello. And I'll now turn it over to Carola.
Thank you. Muy buenas tardes. We hope you're having a wonderful afternoon. We want to again express our admiration and appreciation to Early Edge California for their commitment to achieving equity for dual language learners and their families. We are immensely grateful to Patricia, Carolyn, Stephanie, Dalila, and the entire team. Your work has been invaluable. We're now a better state, a better community, and we continue collaborating with you to improve the lives of children, educators, and families. Thank you. Muchísimas gracias a todo el grupo. Many of you might have heard already the news that effective November 1st, so that's last Monday, the California Department of Education's Early Learning and Care Division is now known as the Early Education Division. And they will work to support the implementation of universal pre-kindergarten and through the universal transitional kindergarten and the California State Preschool Program, amongst others. So now in your prior session, how to design your TK classroom to support dual language learners, we heard from Dr. Dean Tagawa, Dr. Lydia Costa-Stevens, Mario Ortega Garcia, and myself, as we shared important elements and practices to consider when designing classroom curricular experiences. For example, we talked about curriculum adaptations and enhancements, as well as collaborative learning for both early childhood educators and TK teachers through professional development and coaching. If you were not able to participate, you can still access the recording, and I think it's on the Early Edge website, and we'll let you know at the end of this webinar. During the next hour, we will be sharing practices that put in action reciprocal engagement with multilingual families, program-wide practices to support dual language learners at Educare California at Silicon Valley and Franklin McKinley School District. And Anna and I will talk about dual language specific instructional strategies that promote joyful and effective language and literacy development in TK. Now, let's remind ourselves that to ensure sustainability, meaning to ensure that we keep all these professional development capacity building efforts, then we need to work on building infrastructure. And this needs to be done in coordination with local early childhood education programs. So think about Head Starts and Migrant American Indian and Pacific American programs, First Fives, local planning councils, and beyond. And what we can do is create networks that allow for ongoing communication and learning for all of us as leaders, and also focusing on curriculum integration and alignment, and learning how to incorporate, for example, play-based learning. Okay, so the benefits of bilingualism and biliteracy are unquestionable. We all know this. And we're all here because we value, we celebrate, and honor children's home languages, whether it's one, two, or many. But also we're here because we know that there are implications for teaching preschool-age children who are dual language learners. They have the right to learn age-appropriate concepts and skills and competencies, develop competencies. And it is our obligation and our responsibility to make this happen. Now, to make this happen, we must know their language and cultural background and experiences. And if you remember, I shared in the first webinar that dual language learners are unique, right? Every child comes with rich and varied backgrounds, sets of skills, cultural ways of knowing, identity, unique abilities and interests. They're not the same, they're different. Their level of exposure and opportunity to use their home language and English, the community attitudes, the timing when they were exposed to each language, all of these have significant implications on the supports they need to be able to continue learning in TK. All their experiences influence the growth and development in each language. And it is for this reason that TK teachers, whether they're bilingual or not, need to develop key competencies so that they can understand the continuum of language development, they can be able to scaffold their learning and continue to support growth in all of the developmental domain areas. And if we think about all these things, all this needs to be based on what each individual child knows and understands in each language. Yes, this might be complex, but it is necessary because this is equity. So let's make sure we understand each other when we use different terminology. This was addressed in the prior webinar, and we feel it's important to reiterate that the term multilingual learners is used to refer to children or students who have developed or are developing proficiency in English, their home language, and even additional languages. Now, the term dual language learners is commonly used in early childhood education programs, while the term English learners is commonly used in elementary or primary education. Interestingly, these two terms are not based on an age continuum. In other words, they do not refer to children being dual language learners and automatically becoming English learners at age 5 or so. This continues to create some level of confusion, even amongst ourselves. The term dual language learner refers to children who are learning 2 or more languages. In contrast, the term English learner is different. It is based upon enrollment into the TK or kindergarten through 12 education system, when families report that their home language is different from English. Once the student is assessed and the scores show that English is below the proficient level, they're then designated as an English learner and require specialized instruction in English. This designation is temporary until the child, the student who's an English learner, is reclassified to a student with fluent English proficiency. Knowing all the terms will allow us to have conversations where we understand each other. And making sure this is the case means that we should spend the time to discuss it when we open new dialogue. This way we're not confused or thinking that we're talking and understanding each other when we might not. Another area that is unclear as we work together in designing the TK world is language models applied for instruction. The California Department of Education and the US Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Education have taken a position on recommended models for early childhood education for children birth to age 5. These recommendations, published in the California Preschool Program Guidelines and the National Position Policy Report, state that for preschool-age children, the best models include English with home language support and dual language balanced 50-50 model. This last one is based on research findings that show that equal input and output in each language is the most efficient model to develop bilingual brains during the critical foundation years. And this ensures that children who move to other districts and are not in bilingual programs entering TK kindergarten have developed English language skills to fully participate and respond to the curricular demands that are offered in English. The models, as you can see here in K through 12 education, are based on research that focuses on the ages of students in elementary school. So here, here lies the difference in approaches and models. One is not better than the other. It's just the research it allows us to make recommendations based on the different time periods. All children need to be supported. Here in this image, we are creating a scenario where the teacher is bilingual, and the model is one where they're teaching in English and Spanish, the teacher and the assistant teacher. Now the teacher speaks to children using English and Spanish and using strategies to make the learning available. But she also uses strategies that respond to the child who speaks and uses Armenian at home. This is very important. It doesn't mean that because you're in a dual language or bilingual program that you're not supporting, that you're only supporting the children who are learning those languages as if they had one of those home languages and being spoken at home, but the other languages as well.
Now, let's talk about equity in action. These practices are well established and implemented in early childhood education. Therefore, we need to make sure that they are fully incorporated in TK classrooms. This means that it's not a list of practices to choose from. Instead, they are all critical for optimal learning and development for culturally and linguistically diverse preschool-age children. For example, building warm, caring, attentive, and respectful relationships to foster a sense of belonging with TK children is pivotal. From birth, children are establishing those secure attachments that are formed through those warm and respectful relationships with familiar adults. These attachments are fundamental to their learning and development. In addition, including family photos, artifacts, and tribal traditional materials which reflect home life. Those cultural skills, values, beliefs, and community gives families a sense of belonging. It makes them feel welcome, and this is what we want for all children and families from the first day they set foot in our programs. As educators, we need to be explicit when talking to families about the benefits of bilingualism, language preservation and revitalization, the use of the home language, vernacular, cultural ways of speaking for everyday conversations and interactions. This also includes reassuring parents that children with special needs and language delays also benefit from having a strong home language foundation. Unfortunately, there is a complicated history of negative press about raising children with special needs in bilingual households, to the point where some doctors and intervention specialists discourage families from using their home language. Those beliefs and attitudes against early bilingualism are often based on myths and misinterpretations rather than scientific findings. As we say, the universal language of love is the language of the home, the family language. The what and the how to ensure equity does not end in the previous slide. We also need to know that we must be explicit, clear, and loud in promoting the use of the home language, not to leave this to chance or for children to figure out. Instead, having fun with what is similar and different, playing with the different languages that make the classroom a special one. In doing so, we model what we believe is important. Let's take a pause and think. What does a day in a TK classroom look like? We know that we must design spaces that encourage children to talk together and share ideas. This is very important because during those conversations and interactions, children code switch and use speech patterns, intonations, and pronunciations that are clear in the home and community, such as African American vernacular or Spanglish, which I use a lot when I'm speaking with Carola. In terms of checking for those understandings and assessing what children know and what they learn, we must base it on what they understand and express in both languages. Because we want to gather from one language, we don't want to gather from one language alone. We want to gather information from both languages. We want to look at the whole picture. You may wonder, what if I don't speak the language of a student? Or what do I do if the assessment is not available in all of the home languages? That is when early childhood educators reach out to families, staff, and volunteers for support. We also encourage teachers to use the Ages and Stages questionnaire, the section on language development, which is also available in English and Spanish. That means that for families who speak other languages, we need to include interpreters. Parents' responses will help us know about language growth and development in the child's home language. In continuation, Dr. Lewis Derman Sparks states, children learn to be proud of themselves and their families, to respect human differences, to recognize biases, and to speak to what is right. Most educators would agree that these outcomes are important, but it takes a great deal of intentionality to make them a reality. We must foster self-confidence, family and community pride, positive identity with the children in our classrooms to ensure that they see themselves represented. We also need to frequently talk about diversity, fairness, kindness with children, and provide plenty of opportunities for them to make friends through play. And some ways to do this includes using books, multicultural materials, and most importantly, modeling what fairness and kindness look like.
In this video that we will be showing shortly, you will hear from Drew Giles, future doctor and current director of Educare programs, Franklin McKinley School District. He will be sharing what is being done to support children who are dual language learners, their families, the community, and the professional development that educators have received and continue to receive to fully support dual language learners. We will also hear what these three amazing educators, Anna, Tammy, and Francis, are doing in classrooms, in their classrooms, to support children who are dual language learners and their families. One thing that you will hear here in the video is that they're sharing the campus. They have a transitional kindergarten classroom and their own classrooms all set up together and within the campus with Franklin McKinley. So the learning is not only collaborative, but they're close to each other where they can interact.
Hello, hola, xin chao. My name is Drew Giles, Director of Educare Programs with Franklin McKinley School District and Educare California at Silicon Valley, located in San Jose, California. I am excited to offer you a glimpse into our program's efforts to support the needs of young dual language learners and their families. Supporting dual language learners has been an important issue at Educare California at Silicon Valley since its beginning in 2015. Our DLL focus reflects and values the cultural and linguistic diversity of our community. By providing equitable access to high-quality ECE programs that honor and support the child and the family's home language, we are addressing systemic inequities and promoting racial justice. In 2016, we partnered with Dr. Carola Oliva Olsen to begin designing a program that would help build a more robust, equity-informed approach to young dual language learners and their families. With her support, we reviewed the operational and programmatic processes and procedures to identify gaps and areas that needed improvement. Our self-assessment became the basis for the planned language approach, a formal written plan to ensure optimal language and literacy services for our children and families. Our programmatic systems were also reviewed to support us in systematically providing culturally and linguistically responsive services in partnership with our families. As we built systems, challenges arose, like the need to address our competing initiatives and prioritize our programmatic goals in alignment with our mission and vision. As our organization engaged in a strategic planning process, we developed goals related to the strategic plan to ensure that we prioritize and budget for DLL-related professional development, coaching, and family engagement opportunities to build our internal capacity and create sustainable systems. As families were interviewed about their experiences at Educare, they noted a desire for more opportunities to build relationships with other families to strengthen our community. Thus, we worked with the families to organize more family engagement events like a Lunar New Year celebration, informal parent cafes, and more robust parenting workshops and enrichment classes. There are several conditions that facilitated success in achieving the goals set out to support dual language learners and their families. A few facilitators of our success included a collaborative approach, working with community partners throughout the Bay Area and Central Coast, as well as Educare Arizona. Skilled and willing teachers, coaches, and support staff, and a commitment from leaders to invest in infrastructure needed to support our DLL efforts. Another challenge that we addressed was the need to think about opportunities to collect and analyze data in order to assess our progress. We are currently focused on utilizing child language assessments to assist families and educators in supporting our children's language development, as well as full implementation of Reflectable, a mindfulness-based online tool for educators to use while self-reflecting on their work with dual language learners. At the beginning of the school year, teachers engage families through the Family Culture and Language Dialogue form. This is a tool to guide conversations with caregivers about their family, spoken languages, the child's and family's interests, family strengths, and other expectations for the upcoming year. What is unique about this process is that it is an informal conversation that builds relationships while providing staff with critical information for truly authentic planning. This year, we are designing high-quality professional development workshops for infant, toddler, preschool, TK, and kindergarten educators, family resource center workers, and family, friend, and neighbor providers in partnership with Franklin McKinley School District, Santa Clara County Office of Education, First Five of Santa Clara County, and Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County to support our understandings on meeting the needs of dual language learners. Furthermore, we are continuing to prioritize PD opportunities related to anti-racist practices, mindfulness, school gardening, and outdoor learning. In partnership with Franklin McKinley School District, we have established the TK program at EduCare and look forward to utilizing our lessons learned from the TK program to inform how we incorporate the pull strategies and a Reggio-inspired approach in TK settings across the district. Now, my colleagues Ana Herrera, Tammy Fan, and Francis Hernandez will give us a tour of their classroom to demonstrate how they incorporate the pull strategies within their context.
Family photos represent important traditions such as birthdays, family gatherings, and celebration. These photos provide important connections between the home and the school settings. Our children feel so proud to see themselves and their families represented in our classroom.
For DLLs, it is especially important to display environmental prints, materials, and resources that are labeled in their home language and English and reflect the daily environments they recognize. One of our classroom environmental support include print-rich labeling that is color-coded and represent all language of the classroom. Enhanced learning center that contains materials in all children's languages and link to academic themes and book, artifact displays, and materials that reflect the languages and cultures of the families and the children. We intentionally select a picture book as an anchor text to introduce new vocabulary, learn new concepts, and support the oral language development. We identify from 3 to 5 key vocabulary words to introduce throughout the week. We also select the specific books that are best suited to the instructional objective ahead of time. We make sure our dual language learners are exposed to key vocabularies and concepts in their home language by working with our families and with offering small group instruction ahead of time so we could support our dual language learner in actively participating in whole groups literacy activities with more confidence.
Throughout the learning environment, each child can find several books and other print media that are in their language and originate from their culture.
Los mensajes y la información del salón son exhibidos y traducidos en todos los idiomas que se representan en el salón de clases. De esta manera, las familias tienen la oportunidad de recibir la información en su idioma de casa.
On the family board, we display the theme, storybook, songs, chants, and vocabulary words for families to share and discuss with their children in their home language. Since families are unable to spend time in the classroom right now, we utilize our outdoor space to display the family board. This is a great way for families to stay engaged with what is happening in the classroom.
De esta manera es lo que se trata el programa para el desarrollo infantil y la transición al jardín de niños, reconocido como el kindergarten.
What an amazing video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Now let's talk about where to begin. First, we need to know our children and their families. As we meet with families or engage in dialogue virtually, We demonstrate that we are invested in their child's learning. We show that we want to know their child and want to have a positive and trusting relationship with the family. Clearly, family culture, beliefs, home life, and experiences provide a window to the child. It's essential that we engage in a dialogue and that we are not simply sending a document for families to fill out. We want families to get to know us, and we want to model that we are both working together to support the child's learning and development. It starts with establishing mutual respect and care, as well as learning about their goals regarding language learning, home language, school readiness, and future academic success. Also, as we learn from the family, what we learn from the family helps us plan learning opportunities where dual language learners see themselves, and in this way, we promote a positive sense of self and identity. As you see in this slide, the dialogue form or family language interest form is a tool that is developed to capture rich history and language background and interests of the child. It's not an intake entry form. Just like during the beginning of enrollment, we can take these opportunities to share with families the importance of bilingualism and using their home language. We emphasize the use of storybooks in their home language, engage in dialogue and sharing memories of their childhood, as well as songs and chants. And in order to support families in using their home language and communicating, conversing daily using their home language, we want to share resources and address the wonderful advantages of being bilingual. We want to do this throughout the year and offer these resources in their home languages. Fortunately, these resources can be found online in multiple languages. They are an open source and include versions for teachers and families. You can use them to talk to your principals and administrators to further their understanding as well. Now we know there are many more resources, and our state has a wonderful campaign all over the media directed to families to engage in talking, reading, and singing with their children in their home language. We can also use these national resources, such as the ones available to us from Head Start, to share with families how to converse with their children using simple strategies through images in books, children's comments, and interests. Sometimes storybooks can be too abstract and intimidating to parents. Finding ways to show how we can engage in conversations through video recordings and books that are also sent home is a fabulous practice. Dual language learners should be proud of being bilingual. To achieve this, they need adults who make them feel proud and who model and demonstrate why bilingualism is great. We want to support their interest in continuing using their home language to grow in their home language. One way to make this explicit is to use storybooks that send a clear message of the benefits of speaking other languages. These books here are available in English and Spanish. What is good about the storyline is that these books illustrate how impactful and how important it is to speak each other's languages. It also highlights the value of making friends who are different than us. It's a good idea to also let your local librarians know at the public library about these books so that they can purchase them and have them available for families. Now, instead of simply reading the story and engaging in dialogue with children in the classroom, we can connect with families and extend the learning for all of us. In this case, we showcase a letter that a teacher sends to families, which can also be sent in audio, a text message, or video recording. The letter shares that the teacher is reading the book, The Cow That Went Oink, in the classroom that talks about bilingualism. In the story, the animals cannot understand each other's way of communicating and eventually find a way by learning slowly but steadily, oink and moo. This effort is well received by each other, and at the end, they end up establishing a lovely friendship. The letter or recording asks the families to share reasons why they want their child to be bilingual. Now, what do you think that teachers can do to extend this into the classroom even more? I leave it to you to be creative and think about all the possibilities.
Thank you. We talked about the seal of biliteracy and what Los Angeles Unified School District and Guadalupe School District are already doing for transitional kindergarten and early childhood. The amazing news that we received this past week, this is hot off the press, is that California Department of Education and the Multilingual Support Division launched a new biliteracy pathway recognition program. So this new biliteracy pathway recognition program starts in this year, program year 2021, and it's established to recognize preschool, kindergarten, elementary, and middle school children, students, who have demonstrated progress towards proficiency in speaking, listening, reading, and writing in one or more languages in addition to English. So here are the three pathway recognitions that are available. It's the biliteracy program participation recognition, the home language development recognition, and the biliteracy attainment recognition. As you can see, there's lots of opportunities, but this is a wonderful resource and an excellent opportunity to bring into our programs to celebrate families who are navigating this journey towards bilingualism, and to have conversations with us to share what their concerns or challenges might be and how to work together so that it is a successful academic experience and something that they will have for the rest of their lives. There are essential evidence-based practices that can also be found in many professional development models or programs available in California, from the Language Learning Project, Pre-K GLAD and GLAD, SEAL, CPIN, which is California Preschool Instruction Network, the Language Justice Initiative in the Institute for Racial Equity and Excellence, and more. And there's also resources that are recently published and are wonderful in supporting all of us, preschool all the way through third grade, and others from birth to age 5. For example, the Multilingual Learning Toolkit, the Train of Trainers virtual program, which is free also, and it's based on the personalized or language learning strategies, the Dual Language Supports Teacher Self-Reflection tool, and also the coaching tool. All of these and more are available online and again are open source. So what about these instructional strategies? What is important is that we all make sure that the child's home language is fully supported throughout the day. Even when is an English only, right? Teaching in English and with home language support. The home language has to be supported regardless of what languages the teachers or us might speak. As we support the home language, we're supporting the child to learn new concepts, new ideas, and new words. The strategies are implemented and reflected in the interactions with families. This is always at the core of all strategies. In the environment, by the environment, without being overwhelming, the instruction of concepts, math, literacy, language, science, language arts, and effective oral language interactions. Like we said, we start with families. We then set up the environment with words and labels that are color-coded for each language, as you saw in the video in Franklin-McKinley and Educare. We provide a schedule of the day with photos, a family tree, for example. We have posters that say that every home language is welcome in the classroom and explicitly asks families to use their home language in the classroom. We have chants that include the new vocabulary, phrases, and even complex words. We also have quiet areas and many interesting and age-appropriate areas for play. We choose rich, high-quality literature that is fun, engaging, help understand concepts, including rhymes and poetry, books that represent their culture, the ways of being, the different home languages and English. And when they're not available, when you can't find books available in certain languages, then we can ask families to help in creating books together and use your networks to find those who might know where to find them. We have several that we know and that we use, and if any of you were interested, please let us know. Now, let's focus on teaching, on instruction and interactions to support the developmental domains. Again, language, literacy, math, and social emotional development. All these are part of what we teach, but it's done organically, not in time blocks. So this is where it's muy importante, so very important, to have conversations with your administrators. It is essential to have advocates and community supports in the early childhood world. So for example, First Five, Early Edge, your professional development providers, CDE, everyone in the school must be fully knowledgeable of what is age appropriate for TK. For this reason, professional development should not be for everyone, not just, should be for everyone actually, not for teachers alone. So I don't know if you're familiar with this storybook. I'd like to introduce you to you. We love this one. And we love it because not only it's a great storybook, but it can be found in many different languages. It was published in 2020, and it's very easy to find it. It's not expensive, and they are bilingual. You have combinations of Spanish and Farsi. You have others that are English and Cantonese. If you're looking for it, I'm sure you can find it. There, in this one, the story is this one is in English and in Vietnamese. And we're going to use this one to illustrate some examples on how to make the learning available in real time. O sea, that is that during the storybook activity, children are able to understand, to engage, to participate. First, we share the story in a recording format, audio or in print, with families. And we explicitly ask and recommend that they read and converse with their child in their home language. We include specific words or concepts that we will be talking about in the classroom and ask them to provide those words in their home language so that we can include them in the displays in the classroom. We want children to see their language. Next, another way, to do this is one way. It doesn't mean it's the only way. We gather small groups, and this is something that elementary school teachers do really well early on, in how to orchestrate and coordinate small groups. It's important to have 3 to 5 children in a small group, not half of the classroom or 8 to 10. And this is what the research in early childhood shows. So then we introduce the story, maybe with a story walk. We ask questions to tap into children's knowledge, prior knowledge, and their vocabulary. And as we check for understanding, we introduce new words using gestures, props, movement, and lots of songs. as we introduce the new word, we can create a bridge with the child's home language. We want to make sure they understand the story, but not simply translating the words. And what we can do is, one way could be asking questions such as, I wonder what gigantic means in Spanish. Does anyone know? And because this has been shared with families ahead of time, it makes it easier for the children to know those words in their home language, but now they're learning a new vocabulary word, not a concept, but a new word in English. And this one, the next one, answers one of the questions I see in the chat. Songs are critical for children who are dual language learners because they create a fun and stress-free opportunity to produce and practice the new words or phrases. We see children observe and eventually try new words as formulas. And by using songs and chants, we're helping them feel at ease early on. And they're so interested in singing and having fun that we get them to use the words and practice the sounds of the new language through that song or through that chant or finger play. When we read the story, we again do not translate back to back. We don't do the simultaneous translation, but of course we do allow and encourage children to code switch. Translanguaging, I saw that in the chat as well, is a strong practice in elementary education. In early childhood education, this term is less common, but the practice is still implemented and, of course, fully recommended. This is one of the pages of this storybook. It is a great story. It has many vocabulary words that are interesting, fun, and even complex or sophisticated. And as you can see in this page, it says, am I microscopic? Microscopic? You are big. Children love these new words. And it's important to think that when we're teaching new words in a language that the child doesn't know as much, hasn't fully developed, fun words and sophisticated words are important too. What you can see here is that the small group activity is rolling. They're talking, pointing to images, asking questions. The teacher is aware of the stages of language acquisition, each child's language level, and how to scaffold their understanding. She identifies ways to extend children's language knowledge based on their comments and their responses. She uses feedback loops and promotes concept development. She knows this because she knows how to promote language development at each language level. In addition, she knows how to use the story to support children's social emotional development, sense of self, and develop positive relationships. I love this chart, and we did a study with also with TK at LAUSD many years ago, but we had a grant with the Center for Equity for English Learners with Dr. Magali Lavadens and Dr. Elvira Armas, and we used dialogic reading, which is one of the strongest practices to support language development, but we incorporated the pull strategies. And this we called scaffolded dialogic reading. There are 3 levels. And the reason we included this is to show you what that progression looks like and examples of what the teacher can say to help the child move and continue learning and using more sophisticated language. So we begin introducing the story, new vocabulary with photos, movement, props, lots of gestures, songs, chants. And this helps children build an understanding of the story. Now in part 2 or level 2, we ask questions and then we check on the understanding of the plot, the sequences of a story, and we add information. We extend their responses, we provide feedback loops, and we scaffold. And all of this is based on the child's level at that time. Now, level 3, this is critical, we focus on the production of language. So this is where we want them to retell stories, to use the language that they learned, and engage in conversations and dialogue. So here are some examples of how we get to this level of children producing language. Here, the teacher, this is a TK classroom, and the children are engaging in a conversation. The teacher paired up the children, and then everyone gets a chance to talk, maybe something interesting that the teacher intentionally asked or based on a comment of one of the children. It builds on their curiosity and to come up with new ideas, but we get them to talk. This is another one. It's from a program Stretch to Kindergarten. It was a summer bridge program for preschool-age children and included a teacher from preschool, TK, and kindergarten. This is at Foothill College at the Family Engagement Institute. And this is at the 3rd level, where they were learning about the vocabulary and the parts of the story of the very hungry caterpillar. And then they drew the different parts of the story. They pasted them, they put them in this box, and children would scroll and retell the story. They loved it so much that they would take turns to take it to different centers. This is another one, a fabulous one where children ended up then creating a scenario where everything they learned about restaurants, the vocabulary, the phrases, the ways of engaging and placing orders, children were talking. They were happy talking. And in shifting a little bit, because we're coming to the end, the hour goes so quickly. This was a question that was included from the past webinar. And it's, what can we do when parents want the program to focus on English only? And what can we do when parents want to shift to communicating in English only at home? Well, there's many things I could say about this, but it's important first that what we do from the beginning, from enrollment at the program, is that we talk about the benefits of bilingualism, that families understand that there's evidence, there's proof that this is a benefit to children, and that all the things that we talked about in this webinar and the one before are ways to continue talking and addressing the benefits of bilingualism, but also talk about, like in the family dialogue forum at the beginning, we also address any concerns that they might have. And addressing those, because it's valid that families might be concerned about their children not learning English well, and that what the implications are. Here you'll see plenty of resources. Hannah?
There are essential evidence-based practices that can also be found in professional development models such as the Language Learning Project here in Fresno, GLAD, SIL, CPEN, and the Language Justice Initiative, just to name a few. What is important is that we make sure that the child's home language is fully supported throughout the day as they learn new concepts, new ideas, and new words. The strategies are implemented and reflected in the interactions with families. This is always the core of all strategies. The environment, again, without being overwhelming, like Carola mentioned, those instruction of concepts, math, science, literacy, and language arts. Here we have the Dual Language Learner Supports, or the DLS, which is a self-reflection tool that was created in collaboration with Dr. Carola Oliva Olsen, Linda Espinosa, Marlene Cepeda, Veronica Fernandez, Lilian Duran, and myself. And really this tool enables all educators, including those who are monolingual speakers, to self-reflect on the unique teaching practices needed to fully support each child who is a dual language learner. This means that the tool is geared for those educators who speak and don't speak the languages of the children, and it was created to support the implementation of the personalized oral language learning strategies, or POL strategies, as they are commonly known, whether it's in a classroom, a home setting, or virtual context as well. And this tool can be used in different ways, as a whole or in parts. And it can also be used by coaches to help educators by focusing on the areas that they have identified that they need more support in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carola and Anna. We'll now be turning to questions. We just have a few minutes, but we would love to encourage you to add your questions to the Q&A box. And for the questions we don't get to today, we will definitely be answering them in our third session, which is next week. So we have a few questions here already. Just one question related to a child age 3 who speaks Spanglish. What is the best way to teach them the correct English and Spanish?
There's a great resource that Anna was just talking about that is in the slide before this one. And it's in English and Spanish, this one, Code Switching and Alternancia de Códigos. It's free, it's online, open source. We can send you the link. And it will give you very clear practices and strategies on how to model the responses that children provide. And it's really comprehensive. So I encourage you to do that versus us just giving you one little sentence about it.
Wonderful. And what to do when a child is not speaking at all, even when the teacher speaks their home language? And what are some tips that you can provide around that?
Well, we need to know a lot more. And by starting with a family language questionnaire, family dialogue form, that meeting gives us some idea of the background, the experiences. Now, we have to continue having those conversations so that we see what's happening. How is a child evolving in both languages? If we have the assessments, that now we're starting more to know good assessments that we can use to assess in language, in English and in Spanish, for example, we can see. But if the child is not using the home language at all, and is not using English, then we want to know what's happening at home. Is that the case? So we can talk, more one-on-one, because there's really not an answer that will really respond to your question related to that one child. But it's important. And to get the child using language, to try it, I would start with songs.
Great, thank you, Carola. There's a question about how teachers and schools can center home culture as well as language.
Yeah. There's, for example, in choosing the books, it could be centered around a practical idea, or it could be a major initiative, but starting small, I think, is good, and talking about what does culture mean in our context, and understanding that we all have our own culture, and that children have their own experiences as they see each other's cultures and how they are represented in their classroom. So families also have their own experiences and schools have their own culture. But it's nice to be part of networks, but I think having small groups where you can address this with kindness and figure out, maybe I saw one school that did finding cultural books for the school, but not deciding the administrators or coordinators what books to buy, but the families together deciding what books to buy.
Great, thank you. And we still have several questions, but unfortunately we're running out of time, but we promise that we'll get to those questions in our third session. So again, this was the second webinar in our webinar series. And tomorrow from 3:30 to 4:30, we'll be presenting the same webinar in Spanish, Prácticas efectivas para apoyar equitativamente a los estudiantes preescolares que aprenden en dos idiomas. So please share with your colleagues who would benefit from today's information presented in Spanish. And once again, want to say thank you to Carola and Ana for sharing the information on effective classroom practices that we can use with our preschool age dual language learners. And thank you all of you who joined us. We hope that this has been a positive experience for you. And just a reminder that we'll be sending out the recording and as well as all of the materials and resource links as a follow-up later this week. And again, our third webinar as part of this series is on November 10th, next week at 3:30 p.m. And that one is Dialogue with ECE and TK Teachers, Learning How to Transform Challenges into Opportunities. Thank you once again for being with us today, and we hope to see you at the next webinar.